Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. It's news that's nightly about the Redskins. Welcome to the Redskins Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, it came to me yesterday via Twitter. Someone sent me a link to Monday Night Countdown on ESPN, and I've said this numerous times. I'm not a huge fan of ESPN. I get what I need from the network, and I move on. All right, whether I'm watching a college football game or I'm watching a Major League Baseball game or NBA or an NFL game, I get what I need and I get out. I generally don't hang around for their analysis of the game or anything of the sort. I'm not a big Stephen A. Smith fan. Wasn't a Skip Bayless fan when he was there. I'm not a Max Kellerman guy. I don't watch any of those shows. So a lot of times when they say things, people bring it to me. I really don't care because their opinion doesn't resonate with me, okay? If Max Kellerman is talking about boxing, I'm all ears. If Stephen A. Smith is talking basketball, I'm all ears. But anything else, I don't want to hear from those guys. And it really kind of just spreads throughout the entire network. I've been at ESPN fatigue for years now. I used to be a massive ESPN fan, but their content to me has went south, and it went south a long time ago. So generally, I don't look to them, nor really any network for that matter, for a lot of their opinions. I go to certain places and I listen to those guys, but for the most part, I'm not looking for ESPN's opinion on anything. I just want the content and then I leave, which is usually the game. And so someone sent me on Twitter, and I always appreciate when you guys send me something of note on Twitter. Whether you think it's important or not, send it to me anyway. I'll decide if it's pertinent or not, something I want to talk about or not. But I appreciate you guys because I don't see everything. I don't hear everything. So I'm very appreciative of you guys sending me things via Twitter. You guys have been really good about that of late. And so here's another interesting link that was sent my way via the Monday Night Countdown segment. And they were talking about Dwayne Haskins. And everybody's chiming in. Everyone's got an opinion on whether the Redskins were right to insert Dwayne Haskins into the Week 4 contest. I talked about Booger McFarland last night on my Monday Night Football overtime program about how he was throwing in his 2 cents unwarranted. Thanks, but no thanks. We don't really want to hear from you. Last week, Booger talked about how FedEx Field is an iconic stadium and how Bruce Allen and Daniel Snyder are doing a great job. This guy is so out of touch. And that's generally what you get from the national media, which is a part of the reason why I don't tune in to the ESPNs and the Fox Sports ones of the world. Because again, they're so far removed. We follow this every single day. All right. We live this. All right. We live Redskins news. We live the bumps, the bruises, the ups, the downs. And there's been a lot of downs. 20 years worth of downs with this organization since Daniel Snyder took over. We live it every day. These guys just visit, okay? They pick up tidbits of news here and there and they think they know, but they have no idea. So generally, I steer clear of their opinions. But nonetheless, everyone's got an opinion on the Daniel or Dwayne Haskins situation and whether the Redskins should have played him or shouldn't have played him. Now, the reason this one kind of caught my attention is because this came from a family member. Now, I know there are a lot of you out there. I've been reading your tweets. Some of you have at me on Twitter about possibly having Louis Riddick be our GM. I don't really know how I feel about that because I don't know Louis Riddick as a GM. I know him as a television personality, and I actually like him. I told you, there aren't many guys that I pay attention to on ESPN. Scott Van Pelt is one. Louis Riddick is another. Those guys, I respect their opinions. I like their personalities on television, and I think they're very interesting guys that usually have something noteworthy to say. That being said, also Louis Riddick is a former Redskin executive. He is family, and I've told you, once family, always family. No matter how it ends, we all have cousins, uncles, nephews. The list goes on and on of people that you don't necessarily get along with, but they're still family. Might not be as close, but you're still family. Louis Riddick, once a member of this organization, he's family. Now, again, he hasn't always had nice things to say, but then again, I don't get bent out of shape because whatever said about us probably was warranted. Whether it is or not, It doesn't matter. Your reputation precedes you, and our reputation right now is tarnished. It's beyond tarnished. It's trash. And so anybody that's anybody has something to say about the Redskins. Usually it's negative, and it is what it is. So Louis Riddick was on Monday Night Countdown, and there was a debate and an exchange between Steve Young, Adam Schefter, host Susie Colbert, and of course the aforementioned Louis Riddick about the situation that arose on Sunday in which Jay Gruden elected to insert Dwayne Haskins into the game. It did not go well, as we all know. And so everyone had an opinion. And you look at any show, all the talking heads had something to say about Jay Gruden inserting him into the game. Here's what Louis Riddick had to say, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of unpack everything that was said.
It was more than a rough go of it. And look, quite honestly, Dwayne Haskins going into that game was really one of the worst decisions I've seen so far this year as far as how people are handling young quarterbacks. All we have heard from the Washington Redskins all along from their coaching staff in particular was that he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. That's why Case Keenum has been playing. Case Keenum should have been made to finish that football game. He started it. He should have been made to finish it. They're missing their starting left tackle. They're missing their starting right guard. Terry McLaurin, their best wide receiver this year, out. Jordan Reed, out. You see some of the best teachers in this game. And Steve, we talked about this a little bit on the ride over here. Guys like Andy Reid, guys like Doug Peterson, who come from a certain school of thought when it comes to quarterback development.
Why would he?
Okay?
Why would
you put him in there under any circumstance?
Let's answer that.
It reeks of an agenda to me. Okay, as far as saying, look, he's not ready to play. The team is suffering. You've heard all along, going all the way back to the draft, about how there was dissension about front office wanted one guy, coaching staff wanted another guy, and that kind of thing right off the bat. You think Dwayne Haskins doesn't hear that? You think he feels totally supported in this entire process? And see, these are the kind of things I talk all the time about, setting people up for success. That young man right now is being set up for failure. And Dan Snyder needs to recognize that and say, hey, look, you just right now drafted another franchise quarterback, and he's being set up to fail. He should have never went in that football game last night. You have some decisions to make about your franchise going forward.
So let's start to unpack what was said there. And I want to start by first qualifying what I'm about to say by saying this. I'm not here to defend Jay Gruden nor this Redskins organization, okay? We're beyond that. And again, everything that's said, whether it's warranted or not, is probably justified. Again, our reputation precedes us. We deserve all of the negative publicity, all of the things that are said, whether right or wrong. It doesn't matter. That's what we are as an organization right now, and we deserve every bit of it. I don't feel bad. I don't try to justify anything. I'm not looking to defend anyone. What I will say, though, first and foremost, once again, let me reiterate, Louis Riddick is family. So I'm not looking to lambast Louis Riddick. All I'm simply here to say is that I believe that Louis Riddick is wrong. One, about the fact that Jay Gruden is a lot of things. He's very petty. I've had this discussion with you guys in the past before. I think Jay Gruden is a very petty and at times can be vindictive. All right, we've seen him be petty at the podium with the Darius Geis as the latest situation in which he was very petty when he talked about if we're going to be in I formation 55 times, then yeah, maybe I'll have Darius Geis and Adrian Peterson active. I mean, we've seen petty Jay before. Jay didn't want Adrian Peterson on the roster. That's why he made him inactive week 1. That was his statement to the rest. And yes, he could have done something else. I know that there were a limited amount of spots and guys weren't healthy like a Jordan Reed and it forced your hand a bit, but he could have found a way to have Adrian Peterson active in week 1. He chose not to because he was sending a message to the front office that he wanted Samaj P. Ryan. He didn't want Adrian Peterson, and he was being petty. Jay's a lot of things. I've said this before, but what Jay isn't is dumb. And what would have constituted as being stupid is trying to send a message when you're on the hot seat. You're in no position to be sending messages to the front office about a guy not being ready. Dwayne Haskins was the backup on Sunday. And in case you didn't watch the game, and this is where I have a disconnect with guys like Louis Riddick and listening to Booger McFarland on Monday, I'm like, These guys couldn't have possibly, and I sent out a tweet. JP Finley said that Booger McFarland, I didn't hear this, but he said that Booger McFarland said that the Redskins were wrong for putting in Dwayne Haskins in the game on Sunday. And I said, well, obviously he didn't watch the game, okay? And I feel the same way about Louis Riddick. They didn't watch the game. They didn't have the proper context to be able to make the kind of comments that they did, because if they watched the game, if they knew the backstory, then they would know that Case Keenum, and look, Louis Riddick is saying, look, Case Keenum was perfectly healthy and fine to finish the game. He's assuming that. He doesn't know that. He's assuming that. Jay used that as an excuse as to why he yanked Case out of the game, saying his foot wasn't healthy and that's why he was missing some of those throws. That's bullshit. We all know that to be the case. Case missed those throws when he was healthy, let alone now that he's hurt. Bottom line is, Jay yanked him because he was playing bad football. And Louis Riddick is saying whether he's playing bad football or not, that was his game. He made that bed. Let him lie in it. Don't stick Dwayne Haskins into that situation. That's a fair point. But what I'm saying is, there's no right or wrong time to play a rookie quarterback. Everyone thinks they have this scientific idea and equation as to how you insert a quarterback into the starting lineup. There is no right or wrong way. There's the Andy Reid model that he showed with Patrick Mahomes, which that's such a unique set of circumstances. You don't see teams employing that. How many teams told us our rookie isn't playing and then week one their rookie is playing? Remember, and he brought up Andy Reid and Doug Peterson as his examples. Andy Reid had the opportunity to allow Patrick Mahomes to sit behind Alex Smith, who had, oh, by the way, won the division the last 2 years in Kansas City and was playing good football. And he started out red hot that year. If you remember, the Chiefs started out 5-0. Alex Smith was playing at an MVP-like level. There was no way he was inserting Patrick Mahomes after the start. Had Alex Smith gotten off to a slow start, Mahomes probably would have played. But that was a unique set of circumstances, as I just mentioned. But then you look at Doug Peterson. He used Doug Peterson as an example. And Doug Peterson said that Carson Wentz isn't starting the season. As a matter of fact, they went out. They not only signed Chase Daniel to be their starter, they also had Sam Bradford on the roster. So he was supposed to be way down the depth chart. What did they do? They traded Sam Bradford. Opportunity came, and I don't blame them. You can't pass up this kind of opportunity. When Teddy Bridgewater went down, an opportunity came to get a first-round pick for Sam Bradford. They moved him, and they benched Chase Daniel in favor of who? Carson Wentz. He started week number 1. So miss me with the whole Doug Peterson and Andy Reid model. There is no right or wrong time to put in a rookie quarterback. Whenever you see fit, whenever the time arises, you put your rookie in the game. And that's what happened in this situation. He was the backup quarterback. I'd much rather have Dwayne Haskins be the backup than inactive on Sunday. That means he can't see the field. In no possible way can he see the football field. Bottom line is, I disagree with Louis Riddick. I don't think Jay Gruden was looking to be vindictive here. I don't think he was trying to prove a point to the front office. I don't think he was looking to ruin Dwayne Haskins or make Daniel Snyder look bad, because remember, this was Daniel Snyder's pick. And we all know, and I said this before, Jay didn't want Dwayne Haskins. Hell, I didn't want Dwayne Haskins, if you remember. Let's not forget, I told you that I didn't think Dwayne Haskins was all that great. I preferred Drew Lock over Dwayne Haskins. I preferred Kyler Murray over Dwayne Haskins. So let's not act as if Dwayne Haskins was the consensus number 1 quarterback and he fell into our lap. There were varying reports on where people stood on Dwayne Haskins. I thought that Dwayne Haskins was a late first, early second round type of quarterback. And I told you that I liked other guys ahead of him. And so he's a Redskin now. I'm rooting for him. But let's not act like Dwayne Haskins was this ready to go out of the packaging quarterback. He wasn't. That was part of the reason I had soured a bit on him. And there were some tendencies and some things that I didn't like when I saw from him at Ohio State. But the biggest thing being, he just didn't have a ton of experience. Kyler Murray didn't have a ton of experience, but he was dynamic. There was something that he brought to the table. And now I look at Dwayne Haskins. He's a little bit more athletic than I gave him credit for. There's some things that he can clean up, but the only way he's going to get better is through experience. And again, I want him to play. You know where I stand. I don't think Jay was looking to be malicious and he put him in the game to prove a point to Daniel Snyder. He put him in the game because, as Jay said, he was looking for a spark. He was hoping that Dwayne could come in and rally the troops, and they tried to make it. And if I would have continued to play that soundbite, you would have heard Adam Schefter come in. And Adam's an information guy. Stay in your lane, okay? So Adam starts chiming in about how there's no way the Redskins should have played him, and Colt McCoy has to play versus the New England Patriots. No, the hell he doesn't. He is going to play because Jay is still warped in his brain and his thinking that he's got to win. No, at this point, and I don't blame Jay, as I've said before. That's why you have to get rid of Jay. All right, Jay wants to win. Okay, nothing else matters to Jay right now, and I'm totally fine with that. I would be in the same position if I was Jay, looking to try to win games, because again, developing Dwayne Haskins for the future doesn't benefit Jay Gruden, not one iota. But no, Colt McCoy doesn't have to play, or Case Keenum has to play. Dwayne should be playing from here on out. We should be finding out what this guy is made of. He should be able to have some adversity. Everything's not going to be peaches and cream, cookies and candy and ice cream and all of those good things in this league. He's going to struggle. And I want to see how he handles that adversity. Does he wilt under the pressure of being 0-5, 0-6 and things not going his way? Or does he try to battle his way out, rally the troops, and start to win some football games? I want to see that. And the only way you're going to see that is if he's in the football game. So I disagree with Louis Riddick. Again, I don't disagree with the sentiment that it wasn't necessarily the most advantageous situation. But again, he's the backup quarterback. Case Keenum was struggling. And let's not act like it was a blowout. Adam Schefter also said in a blowout, the game was 14-3 when Dwayne Haskins got in. 14-0 when Dwayne Haskins got into the game. He was 1 yard away from leading the Redskins on a drive that would have resulted in cutting the deficit in half to 14-7. Instead, they weren't able to get in because Adrian Peterson didn't make the best run, and he missed an easy throw. And then the Giants made a good play, knocking the football out of Jeremy Sprinkle's hands. Bottom line is, we settled for a field goal. They ended up getting a field goal before half. It was 17-3. It was still a ball game within reach. It's not like they threw him in garbage time. He was in a competitive ball game, and I don't have any problems with Jay Gruden inserting him, nor do I think Jay was trying to be malicious or destroy Dwayne Haskins or anything of the sort. I'm tired of people coddling these young quarterbacks, acting as if they can't see adversity, like they have to have everything around them be perfect in order to insert them into the lineup. To me, that's hogwash. Put these guys in, see what they're made of. And again, I don't want to hear about guys not being ready. Okay, that was another conversation. If you turn to any network that was discussing Dwayne Haskins, oh, he's not ready. Why is he not ready? You know why he's not ready? Because he's not playing, because he's not getting practice reps. Make him the starter, give him all the reps, prepare him to start, show him what it means to prepare for a team all week long and go out and play on a Sunday. All right, you think it's too much for him to digest in terms of the playbook? Cut it in half. Cut it into a fourth or a third if you need to. Whatever you have to do to make him comfortable, there's easy ways to get him completions and get him into a rhythm. You can run the football, which I already told you, Jay's run scheme is trash. It doesn't matter who you put in the game. We could put in a Hall of Fame running back like Adrian Peterson. It doesn't matter. Jay's scheme, and this goes all the way back to Cincinnati. He doesn't run the football well. All right, that's a fact. All right, you're not going to run the football well, but what you can do is the short passing game. You can implement more Chris Thompson, more screen game, more getting the football into the hands of guys like Steven Sims, which, again, what happened to the Steven Sims package from week 2 against Dallas? We wanted to see more of that. Instead, we haven't seen Steven Sims touch the rock, essentially, since week 2. It just doesn't make any sense. So you start getting playmakers the football into their hands, and it'll take some of that burden off of Dwayne Haskins. Don't talk to me about him not being ready. Get him ready. Bottom line is, I don't agree with the sentiment that Jay was out for blood. Jay was out to destroy Haskins, prove a point to Daniel Snyder that he was wrong and that this guy's just simply not ready to play. I think Jay was looking for a spark. Initially, Dwayne provided that. Guys were open. I went back and I watched the tape. I told you guys, there were opportunities for Dwayne to make plays. His head was spinning. The game came at him fast, which is why he needs to play more. So I couldn't disagree with everything that was said on that platform, including what Louis Riddick had to say. I couldn't disagree with it more. And again, I'm not here to defend this organization or Jay Gruden, but I don't think anything was done wrong on Sunday. And I think Jay did what he thought was in the best interest of the team at the time, which was benching a god-awful Case Keenum, who had missed 2 deep balls, one that would have been a surefire touchdown, the other that might have resulted in a touchdown, and threw a pick on the first possession of the game. He was awful in a football game. He needed to be replaced. And again, everything has context, and those guys were speaking as if they had no context to why Dwayne was put in the game. And again, that's why the national media, they're sort of removed from the everyday, day-to-day minutia that goes on around here. They're not entrenched in what goes on every day here. They don't know the story. And some of these guys aren't even watching the game. So again, I think that they were wrong. But it does lead me to a different conversation as we go to in other news. So as you look at this situation with everyone involved, I just spoke about Louis Riddick and how he's a family member and how he was here during the Vinny Serrato era. And I didn't even know that until I watched the Sean Taylor Football Life. And he spoke about how Sean used to run, sprints after practice, before practice. Nobody would be there. It'd be an off day and Sean would be outside running. And they'd look out their window and they'd see Sean running sprints. And they'd be like, man, look at this guy. He is a physical freak. And then that got me to thinking, well, what do you know about Sean Taylor? And so I looked it up and I'm like, oh, he was actually on the Redskins personnel staff when Vinny Serrato was there during the Vinny days. So Louis Riddick is family. And I was listening to the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast, and he talked about, and I didn't know this. This was brand new news to me, so I'm bringing it to you guys. He said that, I did know this, that Todd Bowles only gave the Redskins an interview, and it really wasn't an interview. It was more like a meeting, okay? He didn't interview for anything. The Redskins, if you listen to them, they weren't trying to replace Greg Minuski. They were just meeting with other defensive coordinators to pick their brain on how to be better. Yeah, right. No one in this league does that. You don't pick brains of different coordinators. That's not what happens here. Guys aren't going to sit down to give you ideas, okay? They were trying to replace Greg Minuski, and they just failed to do so because nobody wanted the job as defensive coordinator here. So anyway, the only reason that Todd Bowles even sat down and met with Redskins officials, with Bruce Allen, with Jay Gruden, was out of respect for Joe Gibbs. Gibbs convinced him to come in, and Doug Williams. Doug Williams is an ex-teammate of his. Joe Gibbs is his ex-head coach when he won a Super Bowl here in Washington. He respects both of those guys. And he said, out of respect for Joe Gibbs and Doug Williams, I'll sit down with you guys. But I'm just telling you right now, I'm not going to sign anything, but I'll listen. And so he came here, he took the meeting, and he talked to them, but nothing obviously was settled on, and he moved on and went with his guy, Bruce Arians, to Tampa Bay. Now, I bring it all full circle, though, because Joe Gibbs was in the box on, I think it was week 3 on Monday night versus the Bears. He was there in the press box with Daniel Snyder because Chris Samuels and London Fletcher were inducted into the Redskins Ring of Honor. And so those are 2 players that played under him while he was here during his second tenure. And so he was here to pay respects to those guys and their careers here in Washington. And so it started the conversation on Kevin Sheehan's podcast about how Joe Gibbs still is well respected by Daniel Snyder, and it's vice versa. Daniel Snyder, the one guy outside of Bruce Allen that still has Daniel Snyder's ear and respect is Joe Jackson Gibbs. And so it got me to thinking, and Kevin mentioned this on his podcast, that, what if, Daniel Snyder went to Joe Gibbs and said, how do I fix this? How do I turn this organization around? We're trending in the wrong direction. We're losing football games. We're losing fans in droves. How do I fix this? And what if Joe Gibbs said to him, because I didn't know, now this I didn't know, Joe Gibbs is an advocate for Louis Riddick. He thinks Louis Riddick is and again, Louis worked for him in the front office when he was here during Gibbs 2.0. So I guess there's a little bit of favoritism there. But nonetheless, he's a big advocate. And a lot of you are Louis Riddick fans out there. I don't necessarily know Louis Riddick as a front office guy. Like I said, he seems very sharp, but again, we don't know him as a front office guy. We know him to be a TV personality. He did play in the league. He does have contacts in the league, and he's been mentioned when GM jobs come up a ton of times, but he's never gotten a job. So what does that say about Louis Riddick? I don't know. I do know this, though. Joe Gibbs speaks very highly of Louis Riddick, thinks he'd make a wonderful GM. He also, Joe Gibbs that being, thinks that Todd Bowles would be a wonderful coach here. So what if Daniel Snyder went to him and said, hey, remove Bruce from the situation, hire Louis Riddick as your GM, hire Todd Bowles as your head coach. Now, I think that Louis Riddick would take the job. And remember, we've talked for so long about how nobody wants this job. Nobody wants this job. Nobody wants this job. Well, maybe if Bruce is removed from the situation, you might be able to recruit someone here, like a Louis Riddick. And Louis probably at this point will take a GM job anywhere because he's just looking to get his foot in the door. You know, at this point, beggars can't be choosers. Sure, he'd like to have a much more stable organization to work for, but he hasn't been able to land that job. So maybe the only GM opportunity that will be afforded to him is the one here in Washington. I don't know. I'm just speaking hypothetically. This is a hypothetical about the future because right now the future is bleak, but maybe the future will be bright sooner rather than later. I still contend that Bruce isn't going anywhere. I'm convinced that Dan isn't getting rid of him. If he was getting rid of Bruce, last year would have been the perfect time to clean house. Jay, Bruce, everyone gone after the train wreck of a season that was last year. This year is trending way worse than last year ever was, and yet I still have zero confidence that Bruce is going to be removed from his position as team president. That being said, if Bruce is removed and say a Louis Riddick comes in and a Todd Bowles it comes in, how would you feel about that move? I personally love Todd Bowles, and with all the defensive talent that we have, you really got to take a look at a guy like Todd Bowles, a strong defensive-minded guy that can come in and really get the most out of the defensive talent. We think this defense is talented. I do. I think a lot of you think that as well. We're still a few pieces away here and there. Some upgrades in the secondary, especially at the cornerback position. Obviously, I still think we are a pass rusher or two away from being a legitimate defense that scares people. But you can conjure up pressure. You can scheme up pressure. Todd Bowles does it all the time. He's a blitzing machine. And so I'd love him to come here. But the new trend in the league when you've got a young quarterback is you marry your young quarterback with a young offensive mind. The thought process behind that is if you hire a defensive-minded head coach with a young quarterback, what's going to happen is you're going to get an offensive coordinator, and let's just say Kevin O'Connell stays on as offensive coordinator here, all right? And he actually gets to call the plays. He's going to blow up. Let's say Dwayne starts to play exceptional football. Redskins all of a sudden are a 10-6 team in 2010 or 2020, excuse me, and the Redskins make the postseason, and Kevin O'Connell is given all the credit for the success of the Redskins' offensive resurgence and the development of Dwayne Haskins. He's going to get a head coaching job. He's going to get sniffs around the league, and now Dwayne Haskins is going to be married and paired to a new offensive coordinator. That's how you destroy a young quarterback. So instead of doing that, the thought process is hire the offensive mind as head coach, because if you do that, he's not going anywhere. All right, he's going to be your head coach. He's going to be married to that quarterback. They're going to make beautiful music. Everyone's looking for that Sean Payton and Drew Brees type of marriage, where you got the young offensive mind, and Peyton was a young offensive mind when he first got to New Orleans. Brees was still a young quarterback coming over from the San Diego Chargers. Those two got together. They've made beautiful music ever since. And that's what everyone's looking for, that type of relationship. It's why the Browns elected to bypass Greg Williams as a strong defensive candidate to be their head coach and move on from him, even though he was the interim last year, and instead go with the offensive coordinator in Freddie Kitchens and make him the head coach, because they wanted to marry the young offensive coach with the young quarterback and have them make beautiful music for years to come, instead of yo-yoing coordinator after coordinator after coordinator, because if success happens, that coordinator is going to end up getting a job. So it's an interesting dynamic. I'm still in the camp of Kevin O'Connell being the Redskins' next head coach, which is why I want them to fire Jay and promote him so we can see what this guy has. If he's able to rally the troops, be a leader of men, and get this offense on track, because I think he could be a much better play caller than Jay at this point. If he can get this offense on track, get Dwayne Haskins to look like an NFL starting caliber quarterback, and get these players to play for him despite being out of any kind of contention for anything of note, that will tell us a lot about where Kevin O'Connell is potentially as a candidate for the Redskins head coaching vacancy. So I'm ready to see what Kevin O'Connell is. I think he's a guy, and they think a lot of him. They think very highly of Kevin O'Connell. And if he's anything like Sean McVay, like Kyle Shanahan, like Matt LaFleur, these are all guys that were in Washington, all head coaches now. If he's anything like those guys and they really think highly of him, then that's a guy that you really need to give an opportunity to here in D.C. So it's interesting because Joe Gibbs seems to still have ties to this organization. Despite all of the turmoil, despite how bad Daniel Snyder has been as an owner, the one saving grace has been his relationship with Joe Gibbs. What if he's still consulting Joe Gibbs for advice? What if Joe Gibbs still has his ear? That's something that may be able to benefit us. I don't know if that's the case or not. But how would you feel about Louis Riddick and Todd Bowles being the next GM and head coach respectively? Or would you rather go, and let's assume both of these scenarios come with Bruce out of there, okay? Because obviously, if it's Kevin O'Connell and Bruce, you're going to choose the other option, even if you don't like that option. So let's assume Bruce is gone in both scenarios. But you keep Kevin O'Connell and he is promoted to head coach and you find another guy to come in as GM. Let's say that option's on the table, or the option of Louis Riddick and Todd Bowles as head coach. Now, keep in mind, let's say that you bring in Todd Bowles as head coach. Kevin O'Connell feels like he got a raw deal, didn't get an opportunity to be the head coach, and he goes elsewhere. You have to find a new offensive coordinator. That comes with that package. Instead of O'Connell remaining as offensive coordinator, let's say he says, you know what? I'll go elsewhere and be an offensive coordinator and make my own lane to being a head coach. I feel like I got a raw deal here. I'm going to go somewhere else. So let's say that in one option you've got Louis Riddick as your GM and Todd Bowles as your head coach, but you've got to bring in a brand new offensive coordinator that's going to bring in his own terminology and verbiage and his own scheme. And Dwayne Haskins, yet again, has to learn new terminology, new verbiage, and a whole new playbook. And in the other option, Bruce is gone, and there'll be another GM that comes in, but Kevin O'Connell is promoted to head coach. You keep the same terminology, same verbiage, and he knows what Dwayne Haskins is all about, and you continue to grow with what you have already, and you move forward with that. Which option would you choose, excuse me? Option one, Louis Riddick and Todd Bowles, no Kevin O'Connell on the staff whatsoever, or option two, new GM, new staff, and Kevin O'Connell gets to pick the guys that he wants to keep on staff on board. And let's say that Doug Williams is promoted to GM. Let's just go with that premise with the second option. So Kevin O'Connell is your GM, Kevin O'Connell is your head coach. Doug Williams is promoted to GM. And I think right now the title that he has is actually over GM. But let's just say he assumes the GM role on this team as well. So Doug Williams, or no, better yet, let's say that we give it to Smith. We promote Smith to GM. All right, right now he's the development of player personnel for, I think he's the college side, the college pro scout, the college scouting. He's the head of college scouting right now. So let's go with Smith as the GM, and you keep Doug Williams in house, and you have Kevin O'Connell promoted to head coach. So I like that. So on one option, you've got Louis Riddick as the GM, along with Todd Bowles as the head coach. On the other option, you get Smith promoted from pro scout director to, I think he's the college scout director and head of college scouting, to GM. Keep Doug Williams in house, and you also promote Kevin O'Connell to head coach. What would you do? All right, so those options have been laid out for you. How would you go about the future for this football team. Obviously, Jay Gruden is not a part of the future, and I'm hoping Bruce isn't, but I still think he's going to be. But this is a hypothetical, and in my hypothetical, Bruce Ass is out of there. So with that being said, I'm going to close the show. I'm really anxious to hear what you guys have to say and what you guys would do with the future of this franchise and how you would move and what you would seek to do in order to start to take the right steps in improving this franchise's overall health. It starts at the top. Before we can start talking about personnel, this, that, and the third, we've got to clean up the front office. You can't get rid of Daniel Snyder, so that's not on the table. He's not selling the team, and he's not going anywhere. But what you can do is get rid of Bruce and start getting some fresh ideas and some fresh thinkers inside the building, or promoting guys that we think are sharp to better positions to make some moves that will help this organization. What do you guys think? In any event, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I thank you guys for joining me. Remember, we're Skins fans. Why? And we got skin in the game. Again, why? Because we are Skins fans for life. This has been another edition of the Redskins Nightly News. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.
Louie T. Net.